Welcome back. On our last episode, we talked about 5 different practical things that we could do that we might have that Zionic condition in our life. In other words, that we might have Jesus Christ in our life. So now we're going to break those down one by one. We finished our last episode by talking about 5 different practical things that we could do, 5 steps to create this Zionic condition in our life. And now, when I say the word create, don't misunderstand me. It's not by our own power, our own means, our own intelligence or righteousness that we're able to create that. It's really by submitting ourselves in humility, which is just really opening ourselves to the Lord that He might be able to do His work in us. And so I hope that you'll see that in everything that we talk about. In all of these steps, humility is always the key. If we cannot allow God to do this in us, then it's going to be really, really difficult because we can't just make it happen. And I also want to make sure that I express that even though I'm sharing these things, I know that I personally struggle with them, that I violate them often. And so I'm not some kind of expert. Knowledge isn't righteousness. But it's important that we talk about these things, that we evaluate these steps and where we are and where God is wanting us to go, and that we can be honest with ourselves. So the very first step, and the one we're going to talk about today, is that we do not dominate the church or others, and we don't use the church or others for our own purposes. Now, when I say that, when I look at our church today, and I don't say this to offend, I'm just trying to be real. What I see is that the division and the disarray that we are in currently, our current condition, has a large part to do with the fact that individuals, whether priesthood or non-priesthood, have used their authority and their influence to dominate the church, to serve themselves, to serve their own private interpretation of Scripture. Now, I want to let that resonate with you, and also want to just put a little pause right now, because it's so easy. It's easy for me to hear something like that, and I start thinking of individuals or branches or acronyms, some groups, and I think, yeah, those people, they did that. They used their influence. They just wanted this and they just wanted that. And so they divided us. They were willing to break us apart in order to have what they wanted. While there might be some truth to that, I want you to stop and evaluate yourself and to ask yourself a few questions. And here they are. How do you respond? And now I'm pointing the finger, but I have all these pointed back at me. How do we respond when something doesn't go our way? And I say that, and even just here recently, I had a situation where I was getting so upset by the conversation and what was taking place that in my heart, I was screaming inside, saying, I'm just fine, I'm just gonna leave, I'm done with this. And maybe some other things as well. And I think this is something that we all struggle with. But brothers and sisters, that is a form of control. We're trying to dominate. The reason why I'm saying those things in my heart is because I feel like there's some type of situation that I cannot control. And so in order to get control, I'm going to do something, even if it's to inflict pain in someone else by leaving, so that I can have some form and some sense of control over the situation, that I can show that I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to hurt you in order to do it. We have a mentality in our church, and we've had it for decades, that if I don't get it my way, if the branch or the pastor or priesthood or some other family does something that I don't like and they won't change, then man, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to leave this branch. I'm going to go to that branch over there. I'm going to go across town, go to that branch. But then the situation never gets resolved. That is a form of control. When we threaten, when we make ultimatums that if this doesn't change, if you won't do these things for me, then I'm going to vote with my feet and I'm going to leave. That is a form of control. Rather than staying and trying to work through things, we threaten and we do all sorts of other things in order to have things our way. That is a form of trying to dominate the church and dominate others. And believe me, I understand that there is a time and a place where you do need to separate. I get that. But do we do that too soon? Do we do it too often? Are we doing it so that we can have a form of control? So I know this is kind of heavy. Maybe this is your story, maybe it isn't, but how do we move forward? How would we try to correct this so that we can have this step where we don't try and dominate others? And as with most things in the gospel, it's easy to say, it's hard to do, and that is simply to become like a little child. You know, I have a toddler, and it's amazing to me how I might say something that he doesn't like. I might tell him to do something he doesn't want to do, and he can just melt down. You know, he's in the 2 range, and so we have some meltdowns. Oh my goodness. And, you know, a few minutes later, he's hugging me, and we're best friends again, and he doesn't hold grudges. We're able to not look past things, but work through them. Because he is a little child and he's so pure and innocent. And Jesus wants us to have that same kind of mentality and attitude, and it doesn't come unless we spend time in prayer, fasting, and study. That is a must. And just look at Jesus Christ. I mean, look at what he did with the Pharisees. He didn't say, if you don't accept me as a Messiah, I'm going to leave. If you don't change your religious rites and do things the right way, because I was the one who gave it, then I'm going to go away. I'm going to join some other group. No, he even yielded himself to these men. And so can we become like Christ? Can we become like a little child and have that humility to allow God to work in us, to even see these things, to see when we are doing these, so that we can stop dominating, that we can stop dividing, that we can start serving each other, that we can feed others rather than trying to feed ourselves. And just remember that no matter if you're a priesthood or non-priesthood, you all have authority and influence to make a difference in this church. And true authority, true influence is expressed in servanthood, not in control.